What's going on? What's going on? Welcome back to the Coach's Corner podcast. Happy to have y'all here. And we are on episode 23. We are on the Jordan episode, if I'm not mistaken. Correct?
Damn, man. We almost hit it 23 on February 23rd, but it's the 24th, so it's okay.
Damn. On the Kobe day, but the Jordan episode. It's all good.
Yep.
We're mixing legends today. We're mixing legends. But
gotta be some fire coming in.
Yeah, gotta be some fire coming. Today we're going to be jamming on a topic that's a pretty broad topic, so we'll probably get into all different areas of it. But we're going to be talking about communication today. Communication is a really foundational piece of life in general, right? It's like being able to communicate in sales scenarios, in business, in team management, in relationships, in friendships, no matter what it is, communication is the foundational piece of allowing us to get what we want, but also communicate what we need at the same time, and put us in a place where we are taking control of our life and circumstances, right? I think when we fail to communicate is when we allow chance and when we allow things to happen the way that we don't want them to. But when we communicate our message or communicate what we want and need, it allows us to create a space where we can get what we want and what we need and actually be heard, as opposed to leaving it to chance, and that applies to everything. It applies to business, it applies to relationships, friendships, and everything. But communication is just such a broad topic, but it's one that I definitely wanted to jam on today with just, business, things going on in life, all that stuff. It's like communication is one of those things that me and Mike could probably talk about for hours, but this episode will cut short and get straight to the chase.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, exactly like you said. I mean, I honestly think communication is key for life, and there's obviously a reason there's a book out there called The Art of Communication, because it's literally an art, and if you do know how to properly communicate, you can really get whatever you want in life. And so I think that's another thing that's really important. There's tons of different topics around the word communication. There's tons of different aspects of how it can help with sales, how it can help with marketing, how it can help with your relationships, how it can help with the communication inside your own fucking head. There's literally so many different sides of it. So yeah, no, as soon as you jumped into the intro, since we just, you just kind of told me about it, I was just thinking about that. I was like, holy fuck, I got a lot of things that I think I can talk about here. I was man, this is a cool topic. But yeah, no. So one of the first things that kind of comes into my mind is the Four Agreements. You read that book, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
Back,
dude.
but yeah.
Yeah, and I that's one of the ones that I think I read it for the first time last year, but it's one of the ones that I've added to my annual book list. And for kind of this whole topic, communication. Yeah, I can't remember all four of them off the top of my head, but I want to say it's be impeccable with your word, don't take shit seriously. I don't know, but it's all kind of based around the four kind of or I mean, just around communication in general. And I think that just those two have a lot to do with it, be impeccable with your word, speak, tell people what you want, communicate shit, don't hold shit back, type of thing. And don't take shit seriously, at the same time, don't be offended by remarks, you have the ability to think and create your own opinions about what someone says or didn't say. And we were talking about this the other day too, so I think that's interesting too.
For sure. And I think that's the hardest part for me, being a heavy communicator, is when there's not communication, that's when I get fucked up. It's fuck, just tell me what's up, tell me what you want, tell me what you need, and I got you. But if you're just gonna leave it in the dark, there's this song that's been on repeat for me too. It's In the Dark by Sway Lee and Janae Aiko. And it's funny that I just said that because I've been playing it on repeat. But it's that's the frustration of being an effective communicator, is when you're someone who will communicate and is willing to say what you want and what you need and where you stand. You expect that from others, right? You expect other people to kind of show that same energy. And the reality is most people don't. Most people bottle emotion or bottle the way that they're feeling. And maybe they just don't feel comfortable saying it outright or whatever the case may be. But when you are an effective communicator, I think it's your job as an effective communicator to really put your foot down and say how you feel or what you want and what you need so that others can kind of follow in line. I think that's something that is our job as leaders in general, especially like, you know, as like masculine figures. If you're a man, like it's your the reality is like the feminine energy has a tendency to bottle and like kind of put on a shell. Whereas like males, we want to solve the problem. We want to solve what's going on. We want to try and figure out what it is. We want to get it over with. We got shit going on. It's like, let's just get this done. Let's talk about it. Let's get over it. Right. Whereas females, it's like they might have to process it. They might have to like think more and all that stuff. So it can get frustrating in relationships for sure when you're a heavy communicator and you're somebody who just like wants to get the message across and get it over with. And you're dealing with situations where people just like would rather take some time, and that's cool too. But like being an effective communicator, it allows for less confusion. You know, being an effective communicator allows confusion to get kind of thrown out the door and allows you to just get straight to the point of what you want and need, and allow others to kind of follow in line to be able to either agree with it or not. And I think that's the big thing is like a lot of people don't communicate what they actually feel and what they want because they're afraid of what's going to happen on the other side. Like, okay, what if I communicate what I want and what I need, and this other person or this other situation is going to kind of like combat it, right? Or they're not going to agree with it. And reality is, dude, is like as long as you put your message as to what you want and what you need and where you stand out there, whatever happens on the other side, you just don't have control of, and it is what it is, you know? So for me, it's like I've really kept the playbook in the back of my pocket of like allowing myself to just like put it out there, you know, just like get it out there and allow other people to take their move from there. And that's in business too, right? It's like when you're communicating in a business situation, in a sales situation, you know, like what you want and need is like you want this customer to work with you, right? And if they are bottling things up, they're not telling you what is the truth, and they're telling you facades in order to get through the conversation. It's your job to just tell them, hey, look, like this is what I'm here for. I'm here to help you, and I'm here to potentially work with you. So I just need you to tell me outright, like, what do you want and need right now so that I can take the right course, you know? And that's exactly how relationships work as well. So it's just interesting how much communication and the principles of it apply to literally every area of life. And I think the interesting thing that you brought up is like the communication in our heads, you know? That's something where I think a lot of us, no matter how good you are at it, like you're still going to go through it in one way or another. You know, you can become like the master of your mind, and then something happens and you're like, why am I doing this? You know?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, and I mean, like, dude, like to be honest, like that was one of my biggest takeaways of that Hormozy podcast was just like kind of like how Alex talks and just like thinks about things and like interprets like communication in general, like how he like creates opinions. And like to me that was like really powerful. Like if I could have like taken like one thing out of that podcast, it was like probably that, because like that's definitely something that I have a problem with. Like communication in my own head, like me not really, like I don't know, like yeah, a little bit of both, like me getting in my own way and kind of being like in a down situation, but at the same time I'm very quick to kind of realize it. But what I thought was really interesting for him is like he had gotten that shit so dialed in to where it just wasn't even like there was no communication, it was like cool, all right.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, exactly.
I got fucked
Yeah,
today, cool.
yeah,
Like,
for sure.
like
And I think it like it takes time to develop, you know. It's like it's one of those things where, like I said, like we can feel like we're the masters all we want until we get slapped in the face. You know, it's
yeah,
like that's when it's like, oh fuck, like I didn't realize this was gonna happen, you know? Because like
yeah,
that's the situation in my life right now is like I'm in a situation, I won't get into detail, where like I have a strong mindset. Like I have a strong head on my shoulders for sure. Like I can get through anything and like nothing really affects me. But lack of communication is one thing that does affect me, and that I'm like, yo, just fucking say it. You know what I mean? Like what's up? You know what I mean? And that's something that I've been experiencing this week specifically, which is why I wanted to bring up this topic, is a situation of just lack of communication and just kind of like being antsy all week about like just fucking say it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think that what happens is, as like someone who does communicate, if you're dealing with a situation with someone who's not communicating, then you start to get in your head because you're a communicator. So you would be putting yourself not in their shoes, whoops, not in their shoes, but in your own shoes by saying, hey, if I was in your spot, I would do this. Right. So then we create the story of like, well, why aren't they doing that? Or why aren't they communicating this? And then we start to like spiral downhill, you know? And that was something that was happening with me this week, was like just a situation where like communication was necessary in this specific circumstance and it wasn't happening. And I'm just like sitting on the edge of my seat like every day this week about just being like, fucking say it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and that's where it's frustrating as fuck, is like, is the lack of communication that a lot of people have. And like, I think there is a bit of humility to understand the fact that like, there's some people who just haven't reached the level of communication and understanding of humanity and like how humans work, to the fact that like they're not intentionally trying to, you know, miscommunicate or steer you in the wrong direction. It's just their reaction. Like everybody lives off of experiences that they've been through that lead to reactions that they react ongoing, right? So unless you fix those reactions, unless you fix those past circumstances or how you treated those past circumstances, then those reactions will recur until you do, right?
Mhm.
So there is an understanding of that. You know, I think not everybody has that skill set to like dive back into why they truly act the way that they do. And as a result, it just like recurs. And then you get put in a place as somebody who is aware, where you're just like, on, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You're like, just give it to me. It's all good, you know?
Yeah. I mean,
So
and so going back to the four agreements, it's impeccable with your word, don't take shit personally, don't make assumptions, and always do your best. Like literally those four, like if you can think about those four related to communication and even what you just talked about, like don't make assumptions, like
exactly.
impeccable with your word, with like, yo, like tell me what the fuck's going on, and like you need to be impeccable with your word too and tell me what the fuck's going on,
Yeah.
like that was honestly something that like I mentioned to Steph not too long ago, as far as, because like we had like a little bicker, and it was based around this, like I was just kind of in a shitty mind space, and she was just making a lot of assumptions, and I was like, yo, like nothing's fucking wrong, like I like literally, like you didn't do anything, like I still think you're smoking hot, like I still want to bang you, like it's everything's good, nothing's wrong, like
Yeah.
I'm just like in a weird spot, and like so like after we, she finally like exploded on me, and I was like, whoa, what the fuck? And so like after the fact, she like apologized and blah blah blah, and and I basically brought this up. I was like, yeah, like we need to rock by this, like moving forward, like like don't make assumptions about what the fuck's going in my head. I will always be impeccable with my word. I will always tell you, like what the fuck's going on. If there is an issue, I'll bring it up, like whatever the situation is. And like likewise, like for 5 days or whatever, she's making assumptions, not being impeccable of her word. And it's just all building up. It's exactly what you're talking about. And then she just fucking explodes, and so like that like kind of like thing has like constantly been in the topic of my mind, just with everything, like even like our relationship, relationship with the clients, like everybody, it's like just like everything needs to be communicated like straight up, like exactly like you're talking about. And like people shouldn't feel hindered to do that, like just like if it comes out wrong, like you always say, it's a blessing or a lesson. If it fucks something up, then it's like, well, damn, last time I said that, that person got pretty fucking pissed. So I better not say that again, or maybe
Yeah.
I should say it this way or whatever, like there's so much shit that goes into it. But I think like to me, it's really just like doing it is like the biggest thing. Like you were saying from the rip, like some people are just like really good with, they think it, they speak it. Other people are like, they're thinking it, but they're speaking it in their head, and it's like
Yeah.
ging, 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 ging,
Yeah. Exactly. And I think it's like, to your point, like with that situation, because I think it's like semi-relevant to like a situation in general that I'm going through. And it's like, um I had a call coming through. But it's like when it comes down to it, I think that just like I said earlier, right? As someone who's a good communicator, like you have to take the lead in those situations of like, look, this is where I'm at. Like, just like you said, nothing's wrong, like whatever the case may be. And if it's the opposite way, right? If someone's doing it to you, where like someone's in a bad mood or bad headspace or needs space or whatever the case may be, it's your job to just be like, hey, look, like I'm noticing this. This is where I stand. This is how I feel. And like the ball's in your court. You know what I mean? Like being able to do that is when you become an effective communicator, because I think when you allow it to just like seep, that's when you just continue to build the emotion. But like most people in circumstances where let's say someone's like shutting off, right? Someone's just like distance, like whatever, there's just like a lot of distance, a lot of tension between like two individuals. A lot of times what happens is the person who's getting distance, or the distance, like the person who's kind of like wondering what's going on, they snap. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? Like they snap and they're just like, yo, what the fuck's going on? And that's not how you do it. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
and especially with like with females, like that's really not how you do it. You know, like,
Yeah.
you don't do it that way. Like you have to do it in a way where it's like, hey, look, I'm noticing this, right? So just saying like, I noticed that this is going on, and like here's why I'm communicating this to you, right? Like communication's important to me, so I want to be transparent with you. This is where I stand, and like this, here it is, right? Like just like laying it out, and like just like you said, not making assumptions, not making expectations, anything like that. Just more so of the fact of like, hey, look, like I understand and I see the fact that there's like this weird distance and like this weird tension. So I'm just going to communicate to you that, hey, look, like I understand that you might be going through something or whatever the case may be. But I want you to know like where I stand and where my head's at. Here you go. You know, and like nothing else. Like don't even ask a question. Like number one thing I've always realized is like don't analyze people.
Mhm.
Like a lot of people try to analyze people and try to make assumptions off of analyzing people. So they're like, well, maybe this is happening and maybe this is happening. And then they make these assumptions and they create a character that's just not like real. Like if nothing's being said, you can't make assumptions, right? So it's like you can't analyze people. You just have to focus on, I understand that this is what's going on. Here's where I stand. Here's where my head's at. And then leave it at that. Don't even ask a question. Don't even ask anything about that. Just communicate the fact that, like, I see that this tension is happening. And I just want to let you know where I stand. And, like, now the ball's in your court. And that allows you to, at least, at the very least, you just got all the weight off your chest of that situation. You now have communicated where you stand, and whatever happens from there you have no control of, so it's all good. You know what I mean? Like, but if you don't do that, which is reality has been, is like that's where I've kind of been for the past week, is like I've just allowed a lot of space and haven't communicated, just because I've just been like, okay, like allow the space, right? But like it's all built up to the point where I'm like, okay, needs to be said. You know what I mean? Like, so that's the thing, is like over time, you people need their space, right? I'm also saying like don't impart on somebody who does need space, right? If someone's in a situation, whatever the case may be, friend, family, you know, loved one, like relationship, if someone's in a place where you can tell they need space, give them the space, because if you don't give them the space, it's going to be even worse, right? But it does get to a point where like you can't allow your own headspace or your own energy to be pulled from a situation where you are giving that space. So after some time, you have to do what I just said, which is like, hey, I understand that like I've given you this space, there might be some tension here, here's where I stand, here's where my head's at in your court, you know. And when you do that, like now you've gotten it off your chest, there's no stress, and you can allow the outcome to happen the way it's going to happen without expectation or assumption, you know.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, and I think like the biggest thing that you said there about like kind of like the holding space situation is or something that I can add on to that is like there's not always a problem to solve, like sometimes it is just holding space, and like giving that person like, time to think or gather their thoughts, go for a walk, like a lot of times that's how it is like for me and stuff, like she will like my favorite thing is like when she asks me like what's wrong, and I'll like say something, and and then she'd be like, oh, like I fucking hate these people too, and like, yeah, these people at work were doing, and I was like, yo, you asked me what's wrong. Like I
Yeah,
didn't
yeah,
ask you what's wrong. Like it's not like a, like, oh, what's wrong, and let me dump all my shit on you too. Like I just
yeah,
like unloaded a bunch of shit. Like what, I don't want yours on me too. And like, so that's always like a funny thing to me. But it always goes into the kind of like that concept of, just holding space. Like, like I was saying earlier, like most of the time, like at least for me personally, like when it comes to like situations in just where I'm like not in a good headspace, or I'm not like communicating like effectively, that's what a lot of times it's like I'm just trying to like figure something out in my head, like something's going on, like for some reason, like everything will be amazing, but like something will be like disconnected, where I'm just like not operating like on 100%, and like that's
yeah,
the biggest thing for me. But like to your point earlier, just as far as like throwing the ball in their court, it really just kind of goes into being impeccable with your word, just like, like I have something I want to communicate. I'm not gonna sit on it, I'm just gonna shoot it over to you. Whatever you want to do, take it, process it for a couple of days. I don't really care. But when you're ready, like give me the same energy, like
exactly.
come back to me,
A
like, and
hundred
I
percent.
think that's like one of the biggest things. I definitely been a suspect of that numerous times too, like people telling me things. I'm like, all right, cool, put that in my memory bank and never talk to you again.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
In reality, like that's not the best way to go about it. It's because it also like puts shit onto you as well, like unnecessary shit, because now you got something, in your court that you got to get off, you gotta release. But yeah, no, I think there's a lot to this, to the conversation in general, as far as like, especially with like, relationships, not even like, like, boyfriend, girlfriend, but like, friendships, business, relationships, all that type of shit. Like I was actually talking to Julius about this like the other night. Like I think he asked me like what I did inside of the company or something, and long story short, like we just kind of like, I talked a lot about like me and your background, and I was like, dude, I can't even think about one time where me and Mike butt heads, like I can't think about like one time where I was pissed off about something, or he was pissed at me about something or whatever. It's always been one of those things where it's like, yo, I found this, like what do you think about it? No, I'm not sure if it's the best idea, or yeah, like let's rock, like it's never something where it's like, like where we're like holding back on something, or and like that's like, now that we're having this conversation, I'm realizing that it's just all because of like communication, like we're always in that back and forth, communication situation, where we got access to each other on Telegram, or like there's different levels of communication, so where if it is something that's a little bit touchy, it doesn't have to be like, yo, like what the fuck is this? It's like, oh yeah, I can just send him a message, and like it'll at least get it out there, and like however he wants to respond is
Yeah.
good.
Yeah,
But
it's like talking about shit that like you like have some resistance to talking about. And when you do that,
yeah,
it's like you break through the resistance. It's like
yeah,
that $60 Venmo charge that I had like
yeah,
2 weeks ago, bro. That's a whole story for another day. But I had a $60 Venmo charge that like was through the business account that I definitely didn't mean to send through the business account by any means, but it's just like logged in on my phone, and yeah, whatever. I was not in the headspace to ever even like think about why I sent that $60. But anyway, like as soon as I realized it the next morning, I was like, I'm gonna tell Mike about this because like it's $60. Who gives a fuck? Like
yeah,
obviously it's not that big of a deal. But it's the principle of the fact that like, yeah, like I shouldn't have used this $60 for what I used it for, and like my bad.
yeah,
Like, and
yeah,
it's like just saying it, right? And it's like a lot of people might just be like, oh, like I'll just duck, and like who knows if it comes up, if it comes up. But like,
yeah,
but I feel like that's what we've always had is like, hey, like this just happened, like either my bad or like let's fix it, you know?
yeah.
As opposed to being like, oh, like I'll just sweep that under the rug and see if it catches up with me later.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. And I think that's the biggest thing too, like like reverting back, like it's just always like not being afraid to communicate, it's not like really taking shit too personally or seriously. I mean, like at the end of the day, like we're business partners, you know, so like it is fucking serious, you know, and like we got like 25 employees, like we're taking care of families and shit, you know, and like some of them, like it's their entire family works for us. So like if we don't convert, like their whole fucking family's fucked, you know. So like
Yeah, yeah,
there's a lot of like pressure when it comes to a lot of like, you know, shit that we have to deal with. But like at the same time, it like really just kind of comes down to like number one, you know, like you said from the rip, like the mindset just being like, nah, whatever, you know, like we'll figure it out, you know, whatever happens, happens, you know, like we'll come out on top somehow. You know, it's just all like kind of like it's almost like just really like the stoic mentality where it's just like, man, it is what it is.
yeah,
Damn. $5,000 loss. Ah, fuck. Okay. Looks like we got to make 5K more. You
yeah,
know,
exactly.
like it's never like, "Fuck," you know,
Yeah,
like, God damn, you know, like there's never that situation, you know,
yeah,
like
100%. And yeah, I mean, I think like all in all, to kind of wrap this up because I think we can jam forever ever, but might as well wrap this one up around the 30-minute mark and dive into like a part two of this one eventually on like a specific. We'll kind of divvy up communication into like multiple different buckets, but I
yeah.
think but I think this was a solid jam session overall. Um, but yeah, I mean, when it comes to communication, like 4 agreements for sure, like live by that and you'll be good when it comes to communication. But in addition to that, it's like don't allow yourself to hold back from what needs to be said. I think that's like what's super important, especially with confrontation. You know what I mean? When it's a situation where like confrontation, I think is what leads to the most anxiety you can possibly have in your life. If there's confrontation and it's a situation like no matter how confrontational you are and how comfortable with confrontation you are, it still builds up like that deep like anxiety or like oh fuck like I have to do this, you know. So all in all it's like dude just get it out, throw it on the table, and the worst that's going to happen is the person's not going to agree with it and move on with life, you know. But if it's not said, you're not going to get what you want.
100%. Game over, mic drop. Catch you next
Bam.
time.